Hi, this is Bill Carmody with a review of the fundamentals of music notation. Check out the term list at the beginning of each chapter before you start reading the chapter and see if there are any terms that you're unfamiliar with, and at the end of the chapter go back and make sure that those terms are now clear to you. In music notation, we use clef sign to determine the highness and lowness of the pitches. And there are three clefs that are in common use. The treble clef, which shows the G above middle C. That's where the circle of the clef goes. And the bass clef, where the two dots indicate the F below middle C. And the C clefs, where the arrow points to middle C. The way these clefs are displayed in printed music is a little more ornate than they are in handwritten music. So here are examples of handwritten music, and the main thing about the treble clef is that the circle goes around the second line to indicate the G above middle C. The main thing about the bass clef is the two dots go above and below the fourth line, which indicates the F below middle C, and the C clefs have to point to middle C. The notes that are on the lines and spaces of each of these clefs have note names from A to G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and the note above G is A again, and it starts all over again. All the A's in any octave are called a pitch class. The pitch class A is the same in every octave, and all the C's are pitch class C, etc. C clefs are used by just a few instruments. The alto clef, where middle C is the middle line of the staff, is used by the viola, so sometimes it's called the viola clef. The tenor clef is used by the cello, bassoon, and trombone. These instruments, their music is usually in the bass clef, but when it gets very high, to avoid too many ledger lines above the staff, they use the tenor clef. Also, there's a version of tenor clef for vocal tenors that normally sing in the bass clef with a lot of ledger lines above the bass clef staff. So sometimes it's written in the treble clef with an 8 below it to show that it's performed an octave lower than the note looks like in the treble clef. For octave identification, which C are we talking about? So middle C is C4. Each octave has its own number. So from middle C up to third line B in the treble clef, well, those are all fours. C4, D4, E4, etc. And then when you get to the third space C, that's C5, and from that up to the B above it are all fives. So C5, D5, E5 is the top space, F5 is the top line of the treble clef. Accidentals, which raise or lower a note a half step, or double sharps and double flats lower and raise a whole step. Accidentals are placed to the left of the note head. We say C sharp, but we write sharp C. So even though it sounds like the sharp should come after the note C sharp, it's written to the left of the note, and it's sharp C. Enharmonic notes are notes that have the same sound but are written differently, have different letter names. For example, F sharp is a half step above F, and G flat is a half step below G, and those two notes, F sharp and G flat, are the same sounding note. There's still that black key between F and G, and those notes are enharmonic because they sound the same, even though they are written differently. One's an F sharp and one's a G flat. In rhythmic notation, the shape of the note determines how many beats it's going to get or how long it is, at least in relationship to each other. So 2 half notes equal a whole note, and 2 quarter notes equal a half note. We use whole, half, quarter, and eighth, 16ths, and so on in the U.S. In Britain, they have different names for each of these notes. You should be at least familiar with them so that when you come across those, you'll know what a crotchet is. We use the numbers because it's easier to say a 64th note than a hemi, demi, semi-quaver, but that's what they call it in Britain. The mid-measure rule refers to meters that they'll have an equal number of beats. So if there are 2 beats in a measure or 4 beats in a measure, anything that's an equal number of beats, the mid-measure rule applies. And what the mid-measure rule says is that the note that starts the second half of the measure must be visible. So if we have 4/4, there are 4 beats in a measure, you have to see the note that would land on beat 3. The only exceptions are whole notes, half notes, or dotted half notes, because the rhythms are so simple that they don't need to have 2 half notes instead of a whole note just so that you can see beat 3. When you write 16th notes, every beat that has a 16th note pattern in it, note or rest, is beamed to a single beat, so you don't have beams that go more than 1 beat if there are 16th notes. Here are some examples of music that is written incorrectly on the left-hand side, and then how it's written correctly on the right-hand side. On the right-hand side you can see beat 3, and on the left-hand side you can't. The bottom one, the problem with it is the beaming. It beams across mid-measure. You want to think of 4/4 as being 2 measures of 2/4, and each half is autonomous. It's a complete entity unto itself. So when you write mid-measure rules, you want to be able to see the note that starts the second half of the measure. Compound meters are meters that have a dotted note for the beat value. You're tapping your foot on the beats. Each one of those beats is a dotted note, and therefore it has 3 divisions that equal that note. For example, in a dotted quarter note, there are 3 eighth notes that equal a dotted quarter note. In simple meters, you just have a quarter note for the beat, and there are 2 eighth notes that equal a quarter note. When you write the compound meters, you want to be able to identify that it is a compound meter. So in 6/8, there are 2 beats in a measure. The first beat, the dotted quarter note, gets 3 eighth notes, and the second beat gets the other 3 eighth notes. In 3/4, you also have 6 eighth notes, but they're divided 2 plus 2 plus 2. So when you write notes in 6/8, you need to notate it so that you can see where that second beat starts. And in 3/4, you want to see 3 beats instead of 2 beats. Here is a chart of all of the irregular divisions. So you can have any number of notes in 1 beat, but if it's a division or a subdivision, that happens naturally. If you want other amount of notes, for example, if you have a quarter note as the bottom note, like 2/4, 3/4, 4/4, where a quarter note gets a beat, and you want to put 3 notes in that beat, you have to write a triplet, and these are called tuplets. Duplets, triplets, quintuplets, quadruplets, sextuplets, septuplets, those are all divisions and subdivisions. A division is when a note is divided into its equal numbered parts, and a subdivision is when those equal numbered divisions are divided into their numbered parts. So if you have a quarter note, the division is 2 eighth notes, the subdivision is 4 16th notes. Here's an example of proper notation. When you have a note that is below the middle line, the stems go up. When you have notes on the middle line or above, the stems go down. Look at the text for a whole list of guidelines for music notation, for how to write music that is easily readable. For example, sharps go up and flats go down. So one of the things that you'll notice in the first measure at the top here, the note on the last beat is an A flat, but it's going to go up to an A natural. So really that A flat should be written as a G sharp because it's going to resolve up a half step. So things like that you will check out in the book and in class and in the Music Solutions book. Here are some sample questions for the quiz on Chapter 1. Pitch class, all the notes that have the same name. The mid-measure rule, what's the difference between simple and compound meters? Which 2 C clefs do you use? That's the alto clef and the tenor clef. And which instruments use the alto clef and which instruments use the tenor clef. And you could read the rest of these. You got a list of numbers of the overtone series. Remember that's 1, 1, 5, 1, 3, 5, flat 7, 1, 2, 3, sharp 4, 5, 6, flat 7, natural 7, 1, which is shown in the introduction before chapter 1. Here's another part of the kind of stuff that's going to be on the quiz. I will have some measures of music that's written incorrectly, and you are to renotate it so that it is written correctly. I'm about to show the answers, so you can pause at this point and make sure that see if you can do it. And here it comes. That's what you should have written in order to correct those notations. I hope this has been helpful. And if you have any questions, bring them up in class, and I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.